Before we begin, Galactic Horrors is now on Patreon. Get daily stories in one place, with no ads and no interruptions. Link is in the description or search Galactic Horrors on Patreon. Now, let's begin the transmission. The frost follows the same pattern on the canopy. 14 mornings running, the same crystal branches from the lower seal, the same clear patch near the upper right where the heating element still draws current. I used to study those branches. Loop 6 or 7, I think, when I still had the luxury of marveling at the repetition. Now I wait for the ice to finish forming, check my left hand, and count the seconds until the comms channel opens. My left hand carries a tremor. Slight on loop 10, visible on 12. Today, loop 14, the tremor runs through my wrist and into my fingers with a rhythm that has nothing to do with my heartbeat. I close my grip on the flight stick, and the stick vibrates with me. That is the artifact's contribution. Temporal radiation, or whatever field lets a dead man wake up at the same starting second every morning. It gives back the day. It takes a little of the body each time. Through the canopy, past the thinning frost, Earth's orbital defense ring spreads across my forward view. What remains of it? 20 years of multinational construction, stations and weapon platforms and habitation modules laced into a continuous band around low orbit, the largest structure humanity ever built, destroyed in 9 hours when the machine-armada arrived at strength. The pieces tumble in sunlight now. Shattered hull sections trail frozen coolant in bright ribbons. Structural members bend into shapes their engineers would never recognize. Bodies in pressure suits turn slowly with their arms out, like divers who forgot to come up. The whole belt catches the light from this distance, this angle, a halo of shrapnel around a planet that cannot see it from the ground. I know this rubble field, the way a dock worker knows his waterfront. 14 passes through the same orbit, the same hour, watching the same fragments tumble at the same rates. I have named the landmarks. The collapsed antenna farm is the graveyard. The split-open station module near the inner ring is the jaw, because its hull peeled back in 2 flaps that look like teeth. The cluster of dead interceptors near the transit corridor holds Pete Coates' ship somewhere inside it, canopy blown open, seat empty. Pete was the best pilot in our squadron. He died in the opening salvo because he was exactly where the best pilot should be, center of the formation, first into the engagement, first into the kill radius. I survived because I was running a perimeter patrol on the far edge, outside the blast pattern by 600 kilometers. That was positioning, the worst kind of luck. That is unfair to myself. I was a decent pilot. 3rd in the flight for gunnery scores, solid on formation discipline, clean record, steady, competent, and Pete Coates was extraordinary. Pete is a frozen body somewhere in that cluster, and I am on my 14th morning watching the same ice spread across the same canopy with a left hand that works a little worse each time I come back. The artifact sits in its bracket beside my ejection seat. A dense, faceted solid the size of my fist, dark when dormant, shedding thin threads of pale light when the alien fleet draws close. I found it on the real first day, the original, the one that actually happened, drifting in the wreckage where Pete's interceptor had broken apart. I grabbed it because everything else in the wreckage was shattered, because the thing was warm against my glove, and because by that point I was reaching for anything that still seemed whole. 7 hours later, a machine ship put a kinetic round through my cockpit. I woke up here. Same frost, same breath, same second. The artifact back in its bracket, undamaged. The day wound back to its starting mark. 13 resets since that first one. 13 deaths. 13 mornings watching the same ice form while my body keeps the tally. Each death teaches me something. Patrol routes, weapon timing, approach angles, the fleet's formation habits. Each death also feeds damage into my nervous system. The radiation accumulates. Tremor in the left hand. A growing lag in my right foot's response on the rudder pedals. The edges of my coordination wearing down like a cliff face in weather. I figure 3 or 4 resets remain before I drop below combat minimum. Maybe fewer. Maybe this is already the last one that matters. The comms channel opens at the usual second. Same burst of static, same frequency, same voice. Coastline 7, this is Harlan County Civilian Transport, requesting military escort to the transit corridor. We are carrying 3,008 passengers, current position holding at waypoint November. Do you copy? Harvey Brennan, captain of the Harlan County, Merchant Marine, pressed into evacuation command when the military chain of command stopped existing 8 hours into the battle. He says these exact words at this exact moment every loop. I have memorized the cadence, the places where his tone strains under the weight of the number, the breath he takes before 3008. Behind him, through the compression noise, a second voice says something about the forward passenger berths overheating. Someone else answers too quietly for me to make out. Brennan lowers the pickup gain without breaking his sentence. He does not know any of this. Every morning he is meeting me for the first time. Harlan County Coastline 7 copies. Hold position at November. I'm working on a route through the corridor. Stand by. Same lie. 14 mornings running. The alien fleet holds the transit corridor, the gap in the rubble belt that opens toward the outer system, the only navigable path the Harlan County can take to reach the colonies. Roughly 200 machine ships, automated and self-coordinating, arranged in a formation that seals the corridor the way a net seals a river mouth. They destroyed the defense ring. They killed the fleet. Now they sit in the corridor and wait for whatever tries to leave. One interceptor stands between that formation and the transport. One pilot with 13 deaths worth of education and a body that is running out of resets. I run the plan. 3 loops back, on loop 11, I started building a tactical approach around the wreckage field itself. The wreckage is dense, tumbling, full of sensor shadows and radar dead zones. My idea was to use 2 of the larger station fragments as walls, channel alien scout ships through the corridor between them, and catch the scouts in a crossfire from a firing position they could not see until they were committed. I spent loops 11 through 13 refining the angles, timing the station fragments' tumble rates, calculating the exact firing window, pre-positioning my interceptor behind a hull section large enough to mask my emissions signature from the scout's sensor sweep. 3 deaths worth of preparation for 1 clean engagement. I push out from my holding position and run low power through the wreckage field, keeping my thrust emissions inside the background radiation of the wreckage. The tumbling station fragments are where they always are. I have watched them long enough to predict their positions to the second. I slide behind the masking hull section, lock weapons onto the approach corridor, and wait. The alien scouts enter the wreckage field at the usual time. 3 of them, running their standard sweep of the inner ring. I have tracked this patrol on every loop. They come through the same gap, spread into the same search pattern, and pass through my kill corridor at minute mark 47 of the sweep. They do not enter the corridor. At minute mark 44, the 3 scouts alter course. They reroute through a gap between wreckage clusters that I never factored into the plan, a path that carries them 2 kilometers wide of my firing position. The reroute is exact. It avoids my ambush by the precise margin needed to stay outside my weapon envelope, and it threads a gap in the wreckage that only matters as a bypass to the specific corridor I prepared. I sit behind my hull section and watch them pass. For 3 full seconds I do not move. The plan empties itself out of my head. All the math I died to build collapses into a single conclusion I do not want. They evaded a trap they should know nothing about. A general adaptation I could accept. The machine fleet adjusting its patrols, varying its timing, randomizing its routes would be expected behavior from an automated enemy with learning capability. This is targeted. I built the trap across loops that, from the fleet's timeline, should be erased. The fleet is pulling data from the loops, from my loops, from me. 2 more machine ships drop out of the formation and vector toward my position. They know where I am. The hull section I am using for cover blocks my sensors in one direction, which means it also blocks my escape, and the two ships are already splitting to cover both ends of the gap. I shove the throttle forward and break cover. The engagement lasts 90 seconds. I kill one scout, a clean burst into its lateral drive section that sends the ship tumbling into a wreckage cluster, where it breaks apart against a spinning hull plate. The second scout puts 3 rounds through my port wing, kills a maneuvering thruster, and opens a slow atmosphere leak along the wing route. I burn into the wreckage, using fragments as baffles, bleeding velocity through turns that my degraded coordination makes ragged and imprecise. My left hand fights the stick through the tremor. My right foot is a half-beat late on the rudder, and I clip a spinning hull plate that shears off another layer of wing surface. I get deep enough into the wreckage field that the pursuing ship breaks off and returns to formation. I drift, leaking atmosphere, running damage assessment with one eye on the instruments and one on the alien formation holding position across the transit corridor. One thruster gone, wing surface compromised, ammunition count down by a third. The plan I spent 3 loops building has ended in 90 seconds of forced engagement. The artifact is shedding light. Pale threads extend from its faceted surface and knot themselves in the air beside my seat, twisting into a brief, complex arrangement I have learned to interpret as a tactical map. Positions, vectors, a timing window. The fleet's formation rendered in filaments of cold light that hold for roughly 90 seconds before they dissolve. In early loops, these maps saved my life. I used them to time attacks, predict patrol movements, identify weak points in the corridor seal. They were accurate enough to build strategy around. But the ambush I just lost was built on data from these maps. The patrol route I expected, the route the scouts were supposed to take, came from a projection the artifact showed me on loop 12. The artifact predicted a route the aliens then avoided. The map matched the fleet's prior behavior and failed against its current behavior. As if the fleet updated its algorithms and the artifact's projection did not keep pace. Or as if the map showed me what I needed to see, to commit to a plan the fleet was already prepared to counter. I seal the port wing leak with emergency hull putty, let the thrust equalizers compensate for the dead maneuvering thruster, and start planning around the contingency I have been holding in reserve. Citadel 9, what is left of it, drifts in the outer belt of the wreckage field. A defense platform the size of a city block, broken at the midsection, rotating on its long axis in a slow, lopsided tumble. Before the battle, it carried enough firepower to split a capital ship. Its fire control computers are dead. Its reactor is cold. Its crew is gone. But the weapon mounts survived the destruction intact, and the emergency backup circuits still hold enough charge to power them if someone stands on the gunnery deck and fires by hand. I have known about Citadel 9 since Loop 4, boarded it twice before. The approach is a 30-minute flight through dense wreckage under normal conditions, timing my dock to the functional airlock on the platform's upswing rotation. Today, with a dead thruster and chewed-up wing surfaces, the approach eats 45 minutes and 3 failed docking attempts before I match the platform's spin closely enough to latch on. The airlock cycles. I take the artifact from its bracket, tuck it inside my flight suit, and pull myself through. Inside, the platform is cold and black. Emergency lighting persists in some sections. Amber strips along the baseboards that guide toward evacuation routes nobody used in time. The rotation creates shifting gravity, pulling me toward whatever wall is currently the floor, then easing, then pulling again as the platform completes its roll. I move through corridors I have memorized on prior visits, climbing a maintenance shaft where the spin pins me against the bulkhead every 14 seconds, then squeezing through a buckled frame into the gunnery deck. The guns are here. 4 heavy batteries on manual swivel mounts, each one built to throw a tungsten slug fast enough to crack a machine ship from bow to stern. The fire control screens are dead glass. The targeting computer is a black panel on the forward wall. But the emergency backup switch sits where I left it, and when I pull it, Current from the platform's reserve batteries crawls into the conduits. The gun mounts unlock with a deep vibration I feel through the deck plates and up into my knees. My hands are the targeting system now. Traversal wheels for azimuth, elevation cranks for pitch, manual triggers. Aiming by eye through an armored viewport that gives me a wide-angle view of the wreckage field and the alien formations spread across the transit corridor beyond it. The artifact is tucked inside my flight suit, pressed against my ribs. Its light threads bleed through the fabric and extend into the air around me, knotting into another map. The alien fleet's positions. A timing window, roughly 40 minutes out, when the fleet's outer screen will execute a standard rotation and 6 of its ships will cluster tight enough for the platform's heavy guns to catch 3 or 4 of them in a single volley. That will not be enough by itself. The Harlan County is 20 minutes away from the corridor at best acceleration. A gap that opens and closes in seconds is useless unless the hit triggers a wider formation response. Ships pulling out of the seal, overlapping vectors. The corridor briefly confused enough for me to exploit on the next pass. The objective is disruption. A brief break in the seal. I study the map. The timing window matches what I have observed on prior loops. The positions track with established fleet behavior. The approach vectors for the outer screen rotation look consistent. After what happened with the ambush, my trust in this map is thin. But I am one pilot with 4 manual guns against 200 enemy ships, and the artifact's projection is the closest thing I have to a targeting solution. I wait. The platform rotates. I watch the fleet through the viewport, tracking the outer screen ships as they begin their formation shift. The artifact's map holds. The ships drift where the map predicted, at the speed it projected, in the pattern it displayed. At the 40-minute mark, the cluster forms, 6 machine ships grouped tight on the starboard edge of the corridor. I fire. The heavy batteries kick through the deck. 3 slugs connect. 2 machine ships fracture and spin apart, venting internal components into the wreckage field in expanding fans of wreckage. A third takes a grazing hit that shears its propulsion module free of its central body. The remaining 3 scatter, and for 8 seconds there is a visible gap in the corridor seal, just wide enough for a ship the size of the Harlan County to pass through. 8 seconds. The transport is still holding at waypoint November, 20 minutes away. The gap means nothing unless I can make the fleet overcorrect. Then the response arrives from below the orbital plane. 12 machine ships rising fast on a vector the artifact's map showed as clear space. They come from underneath the platform's rotation axis, targeting the weapon mounts, flanking from the exact angle I left unguarded because the artifact told me nothing was there. Citadel 9 convulses around me. The first impacts hit the lower hull, and the platform's rotation destabilizes. Its spin shifts into a wobble that throws my hands off the traversal wheels. My shoulder slams into the elevation crank. Pain flashes white down my arm, and my trembling hand closes uselessly around empty air before I force it back onto the controls. I swing the guns toward the new threat, but manual targeting against fast-closing ships with a deck pitching under me produces missed shots and desperate corrections. I hit one. The remaining 11 close the distance in seconds. Through the viewport, past the gun barrels and the incoming ships, I can see the Harlan County. The transport drifts through the wreckage field with its hull lights stuttering in rapid sequences. Evacuation code, an automated distress broadcast cycling through the standard patterns. Around the transport, machine ships are gliding into a new arrangement, a closing formation. A net drawing tight around 3,000 people whose only armed escort is dying on a gunnery deck in the outer belt. I watch the net tighten. Then the deck splits under me, the viewport becomes a wall of white, and the white becomes cold. Then nothing. The frost forms on the canopy. Same pattern, same branches, same clear patch where the heating element works. Loop 15. My right foot is worse. I tested on the rudder pedals during the first minute of the new loop. Push, release, and the lag is measurable now. a full half beat behind where the signal should land. My left hand trembles against the stick when I rest it there. The fingers close when I tell them to, but the closure is coarse, a grab where a grip used to be. I run the math the way a pilot runs fuel calculations. What I have, what I need, what the shortfall means. 2 or 3 resets remain before my motor control drops below combat minimum, below the threshold where I can track a target, hold a firing solution, execute a high G turn, or dock with anything that requires precision. After that point, the artifact can keep giving back the morning, but the man it brings back will not be able to fly a fight. The comms channel opens. Coastline 7, this is Harlan County, civilian transport requesting military escort to the transit corridor. We are carrying 3,008 passengers. Current position holding at waypoint November. Do you copy? Brennan's voice. Same cadence, same breath before the number. 15 mornings, and I know his speech patterns better than my own family's. Harlan County, Coastline 7 copies. Hold position. I need to ask you some questions. A pause. That is new for him. Every previous loop I gave the standard reassurance and cut the channel. This time I have deviated. Go ahead, Coastline 7. What's your engine output at current passenger load? Maximum sustainable thrust? Hull stress limits under evasive maneuvering? What's your crew complement? And how many of them can operate the ship under combat conditions? Another pause. Longer this time. Coastline 7, those are operational details I'd normally restrict to command authority. Can you confirm your authorization level? Captain Brennan, command authority stopped existing when the fleet did. The defense ring is rubble. I am the entirety of your military escort. Give me your numbers so I can figure out how to get your ship through that corridor. He gives me the numbers. Engine output, thrust curves at various load levels, hull stress tolerances, crew complement. 12, including Brennan. His chief engineer is a man named Aldis. His comms officer is a cadet named Rivera, promoted by catastrophe into a job she should not have had for another 2 years. The forward passenger berths are overheating because cargo ventilation was never meant to keep people alive. The infirmary has already run out of anti-nausea patches for the children. I file each figure. 14 previous loops, and I never once asked. Every morning, I threw myself at the enemy fleet, studying the formation, mapping the patrols, building ambushes and attack plans. I spent 14 days learning how to kill machine ships and 0 days learning about the ship I was supposed to protect. The numbers reshape the problem. The Harlan County is slow. Maximum acceleration at passenger load is roughly a third of what my interceptor can manage. The hull will hold against fragment strikes, but would buckle under a single direct hit from a machine ship's kinetic battery. The ship is an unarmed cargo hauler packed with civilians, with none of the systems it would need to survive a fight. It cannot run the corridor under fire, it cannot evade, it cannot survive contact with even one hostile ship. If the transport is going to reach the transit corridor alive, the corridor has to be functionally open when it arrives. Every machine ship in the Harlan County's path has to be somewhere else. 14 loops of fighting confirm it. I cannot escort the transport through the fleet. I have to move the fleet away from the transport. And 14 loops of fighting also produce the thing I have been circling for days without landing on it. The aliens are countering my specific tactics across loops. The artifact's maps are feeding me half-truths that keep me predictable. Every death I spend attacking the fleet hands them more data on how I fight. My body is degrading. The method I have relied on from the beginning, iterate, die, adjust, try again, is collapsing, and the collapse is accelerating. I need to see what the enemy sees. I need the inside of a machine ship. I need to find out how a fleet of automated weapons is pulling tactical data from a timeline that resets every time I die. The artifact sits in its bracket, shedding its pale threads. I stare at it and weigh what I am about to spend. If I fly toward the alien formation and let them take my ship, I can carry the artifact into one of their vessels. I can observe their operations from inside. I can find the mechanism that lets them track the loops. The artifact resets the day when I die, so whatever kills me in there should send me back to this morning. I lose a reset and another increment of my body. I also lose this loop's version of the Harlan County. If I spend today inside an alien ship, the transport has no cover. The net closes on schedule. 3,008 people die in a version of this day that the next reset will erase if the artifact works the same way inside alien machinery. I open comms. Harlan County, Coastline 7, change of plans. Hold at November, keep your engines warm and your crew on stations. I'll contact you within 6 hours. Coastline 7, what's the situation? What are we looking at here? I'm working on something. Coastline 7 out. I cut the channel before Brennan can press further. I know what his next line would be. He would ask if anyone else is coming. Every loop if I give him the space, he asks. The answer has been the same since the defense ring came apart. I take the artifact from its bracket and tuck it inside my flight suit. Pre-flight sequence. The docking release requires 3 coordinated actuations. Safety catch, latch lever, separation push. My fingers miss the latch on the first attempt. The tremor drags my index finger wide of the lever by a centimeter. Second attempt, my thumb slides off the safety before the latch engages. I manage it on the third try, each motion requiring the kind of focused attention that used to be as automatic as blinking. 3 weeks ago, I could release a dock latch in the dark, by feel, in the middle of a firefight. 15 mornings of temporal radiation have turned it into a problem that takes 3 attempts and all of my concentration. I pull away from the wreckage anchor and point my interceptor at the alien formation. The machine fleet fills the forward view. 200 ships spread across the transit corridor, the net that has held the Harlan County in place for 15 identical days. I power down my weapons, retract the targeting array, and fly toward the formation on a clean approach with my emissions profile as visible as I can make it. I am bringing them a gift. I just need to see what they do with it. The machine ship takes me at the edge of the formation. I am running a clean approach, weapons cold, targeting array stowed, emissions signature wide open, and the ship intercepts on a lateral vector smooth and fast. Capture apparatus extends from its ventral hull. 3 articulated arms, each ending in a clamp broad enough to grip a fuselage. They seize my interceptor at the nose, midsection, and engine housing, and the contact slams me against my harness hard enough to crack the cockpit's secondary display panel. The arms drag me in. My interceptor slides through an opening in the machine ship's hull that irises wider to accept it, then contracts behind me. The opening seals. I am inside. Dim, amber-brown light radiates from the structural material of the ship itself, as if the hull generates its own low illumination. The bay is functional space and nothing more. A vacuum in freefall, built without any accommodation for living bodies. Storage racks along the walls hold salvaged wreckage, pieces of the defense ring, fragments of interceptors I recognize as human manufacture, a section of antenna array with frost still clinging to its struts. The machine ship collects wreckage, catalogues it, files it away. I release my harness, pressurize my suit helmet, and push out of the cockpit into the bay. The artifact is in my flight suit, pressed against my ribs. Its light threads are already extending through the fabric, brighter and more complex than anything I have seen in the cockpit. The threads reach outward into the vacuum of the bay and seem to find purchase on something invisible. They pull taut, vibrate, and reorient toward a passage leading deeper into the ship. I follow them. The interior of a machine ship was never built for walking. I pull myself along structural members, squeeze through gaps between equipment banks, climb over conduit junctions where data moves in visible flashes of amber light. Quick pulses chase each other through translucent channels the way current runs through a circuit board, if the circuit board were the size of a room. The ship communicates with itself through its own body. Pressure shifts move the walls around me, surfaces contracting and expanding in slow rhythms as the vessel processes information or adjusts its internal configuration. I am traveling through something closer to a living engine than a vehicle. a system that has no bridge, cockpit, or control room, because nothing that needed one ever sat inside it. The artifact's threads grow denser as I push deeper. They branch, multiply, weave themselves into the ship's conduit channels, the way roots find water in soil. The artifact knows this ship. The ship knows the artifact. Whatever I'm carrying against my chest, it belongs here in a way I am only beginning to understand. 3 chambers in, I am estimating, because the spaces have no doors or walls in any human sense, just transitions in density and function. The conduits converge. Data channels feed in from every direction and pour into a central structure. A mass of interwoven pathways suspended in the middle of the largest open space I have found, roughly 10 meters across. Conduits enter the mass from every surface of the chamber. This is the ship's brain, or its library, or its memory. Data transits through it in constant flow, amber light chasing itself through pathways too fine and numerous to count. The artifact's threads connect to the structure. The display changes, or unfolds. The data pathways illuminate in sequence, and in the light I see patterns I recognize. Flight paths. My flight paths. The first one takes 5 full seconds to identify. A 3-dimensional trace rendered in amber light. A curving, banking, decelerating path through a wreckage field. I know that path. I flew it on loop 3, threading between 2 tumbling hull sections to shake a pursuing scout. The trace is mapped with precision I could never reproduce from memory. Every thruster correction, every velocity change, every wobble where my hands overcorrected on the stick. Beside it, connected by branching data channels, is the counterpath. The pursuit solution the fleet derived from my evasion. The optimal intercept route, the firing windows, the predicted decision points where I would commit to a turn direction. My path and its answer, paired like a problem set and its solution key. My left hand curls inside the glove. Not by command. The fingers draw in and stay there, shaking against my palm while my breath rasps loud inside the helmet. The next trace is loop 5. My attack run against the formation's left flank, using a dead interceptor's hull as a radiation shield to close within firing range. Mapped in the same amber light, annotated with the same counter-analysis. The moment I broke cover. The angle I preferred. The 3-second window when my targeting focus would narrow and my evasive response would degrade. Then more, faster, the pattern established and repeating. Loop 7. My attempt to use wreckage shadows for sensor cover. Loop 9. Loop 11. The ambush corridor from loops 11 through 13. 14 traces in total, each one a complete record of my tactical behavior during a single loop, each one married to the fleet's derived counter-strategy. I am watching 14 days of my war, replayed and dissected and turned into the operating manual for killing me. The artifact's light threads brighten sharply, knotting deeper into the data structure, and a 15th trace begins forming. Today's loop. The powered-down approach, the capture, the route I took through the machine ship. Already being written into the fleet's library, while I hang here watching my own record grow. The artifact is a training probe disguised as rescue. It samples the holder's combat telemetry, flight path, motor response, targeting behavior, panic corrections, evasive instinct. At the reset event, it transmits the completed trace. The light thread maps it produced in my cockpit were excerpts from this library, accurate enough to keep me engaged, shaped with enough omission to ensure my death stayed productive. The blind spot that killed me on the gunnery deck. The patrol route that bypassed my ambush. Curated failures, each one engineered to generate a new category of data about my emergency responses and split-second choices. I built this. The thought hits as a cold fact, settling into the suit with me. 14 loops of throwing myself against a fleet that recorded every move, inverted every pattern, and integrated every lesson into its combat doctrine. I trained a formation of 200 ships to kill Danny Wyatt, and I did it one death at a time. Deeper in the data structure, beyond my 14 traces, archived in what looks like a separate storage layer, I find other records, other flight paths, other evasion patterns, other combat signatures, rendered in colors I have not seen the structure used before, scaled for vehicles and physics that do not match anything human. One trace folds through itself in a spiral that no human pilot could survive. Another moves in synchronized fragments, as if the defender had been a swarm instead of a body. Each set is complete, closed, paired with its counter-analysis the way mine are. Other pilots, other species, other wars where the machine fleet deployed an artifact, let the strongest survivor loop against it, and harvested the data until the user degraded or understood the trap. I am looking at the fleet's full education, every defender it has ever studied this way, every civilization that lost its best remaining fighter to a small, warm, faceted object that felt like rescue. The ship's conduits change rhythm around me. The pressure shifts I have been feeling through the walls come faster, sharper. The vessel is registering the artifact's deep integration with its core, systems waking to the intrusion. I feel the response in the structural members, surfaces contracting, conduit junctions sealing, the architecture reconfiguring between me and the bay where my interceptor sits. I pull myself toward the passage I came through and find it narrower than it was. The structural members closing around a gap that was barely wide enough on my first transit. A bar of hull extrudes from one wall and locks into another. Behind me, the data core continues to glow. The 15th trace keeps writing itself. The ship is solving the problem of my presence. The last thing I see before the ship kills me is the 15th trace completing itself in the data structure. Today's loop, bright and detailed, filing itself beside the other 14, then pressure and dark, and the frost forming on the canopy. Loop 16. My left hand is nearly useless. The fingers contract into a loose fist and open, but the graduated motion between those two states, the fine adjustment, the ability to squeeze a trigger to a specific pressure or turn a dial to a precise setting, is gone. My right hand compensates, but a sympathetic tremor has started in the wrist. Both feet respond to pedal input with measurable lag. My spatial processing fails when I turn my head too fast, the visual field smearing and taking a full second to resolve before I can check instruments or judge distance. One reset left after this one, if that. The artifact sheds its light threads beside my seat, knotting the air into another map. Fleet positions, patrol vectors, a timing window. The same curated intelligence that guided me to the gunnery deck and left me open to the wave that destroyed it. I let the map form, study it for a few seconds to confirm the fleet's disposition matches prior loops, and then look away. Everything I did for 15 loops fed the enemy. Every tactic I built, every pattern I flew, every instinct I followed under fire was recorded, processed, turned into counter-doctrine. The artifact is the pipeline. The maps are bait. The only strategic asset I possess now is the knowledge I pulled from inside the machine ship. The fleet's data architecture, the way completed combat traces route from the artifact through the command ship and out to the formation. The fleet does not know I have this, because the artifact does not transmit observation. It transmits use. It learns the holder as a weapon learns a target. The command ship sits in the center rear of the formation. I identified it during my time inside the fleet, the vessel that processes accumulated loop data and distributes tactical updates to the other 200 ships. If I damage the command ship badly enough to interrupt that distribution, the fleet continues fighting on its last loaded algorithms. Operational, lethal, but frozen. 200 ships locked onto a dataset built entirely around countering my previous flying, unable to adapt to anything new. The plan requires the Harlan County to move through a specific corridor at a specific moment. That means Brennan has to trust a man he has never spoken to before today. I fly toward the transport and open comms. Harlan County, Coastline 7. Coastline 7, Harlan County receiving. Captain Brennan. We've been broadcasting for military escort to the transit corridor. Captain Brennan, I need you to listen carefully. and I understand that what I'm about to say will be difficult to accept. A pause. Go ahead, Coastline 7. I've lived this day 16 times. There is an artifact aboard my ship that resets the timeline when I'm killed. Every morning I wake at the same second in the same position and the day starts over. You and I have had this conversation 15 times. You've never remembered it because for you, it's always the first. Silence on the channel. I give him 5 seconds before continuing. You're about to ask me to confirm my service number and psychological status. Your exact words will be, Coastline 7, can you confirm your service number and current medical status? You phrase it the same way every morning. The silence holds, then Brennan's voice returns. Coastline 7, can you confirm your service number and current medical status? Service number 44716, Lieutenant Danny Wyatt, Orbital Defense Command. Medical status, cumulative neurological damage from temporal radiation exposure. My left hand has lost fine motor function. Reaction time is degraded. I know how that sounds. It sounds like you need medical attention, Lieutenant. Your ship's hull stress limit under evasive maneuvering is 1900 kilopascals at the forward frame and 2200 at the midsection, where the passenger compartments add structural mass. Your crew complement is 12. Your chief engineer is Aldis, and he told you 6 hours ago that the port engine's fuel injector needs servicing, but he can keep it running for another 40 hours. Your comms officer is Cadet Rivera. She was a third year at the Orbital Academy before the battle happened. You have 3,008 passengers. The forward berths are overheating. Your infirmary is out of anti-nausea patches. You carry 2 emergency shuttles rated for 40 apiece, but one has a docking clamp malfunction that Aldis has not reported yet. The quality of Brennan's silence changes. Longer, heavier. How do you know about the injector? You told me. Loop 15 yesterday from my perspective. I asked detailed questions about your ship's status and you answered because I convinced you that command authority was gone and I was all you had. The injector, the docking clamp, Aldis, Rivera. You gave me all of it. You won't remember the conversation. It has not happened for you yet. And it won't happen in this timeline because I'm using this loop for something else. Lieutenant Wyatt, I need to understand. The alien fleet begins its corridor sealing maneuver in approximately 4 hours and 12 minutes. The outer screen rotates first, then the inner formation compresses toward your position. The net will close around the Harlan County within 6 hours of this conversation. Every version of this day I have watched ends the same way. Your ship is caught. Your hull lights go to evacuation code, and the fleet finishes it. Brennan does not speak for a while. When he comes back, his voice is quieter. What do you want me to do? Not yet. This loop is for command ship disruption. If I survive long enough to signal you, you'll run. If I die, the day resets and we have this conversation again. On the next loop, I will come to you in person, remove the artifact from my ship, and transmit the route only after it is sealed away from any combat system. Until then, you hold at November and keep your crew ready. You want me to trust an order you already know I won't remember? No. I want to confirm that when I come back I can make you believe me fast enough to save your ship. 3,008 people, Lieutenant. I know the number, Captain. Then don't spend them proving a theory. The line lands harder than he can know. I won't! I cut the channel before he can hear me fail to make that a promise. Then I turn my interceptor toward the alien formation and bring my engines up to combat power. The command ship is identifiable from outside by a marginally larger hull profile and the concentration of data conduit channels running along its exterior surface. Features I would never have noticed at distance if I had not been inside one of its sister vessels and learned what they look like up close. My approach uses vectors the fleet's algorithms would classify as suicidal. Steep-angle dives, high-velocity passes through wreckage, corrections at structural tolerance limits, the kind of flying I could do on Loop 1, the kind my body can barely sustain on Loop 16. I hit the formation from an angle the fleet has never seen me attempt, diving through the corridor wreckage at a velocity that narrows my vision and pushes my damaged spatial processing toward its threshold. Machine ships scramble to intercept, but my approach is outside their trained parameters, too fast, too steep, too reckless. I punch through the outer screen and line up the command ship. My first burst hits the forward hull. Something ruptures. A conduit cluster splits open through the impact point, venting amber light into vacuum. I correct for a second pass, and my right hand's tremor drags the correction wide. The firing solution drifts. My second burst chews into the command ship's flank 100 meters off target, hull damage with no critical systems behind it. 2 machine ships close from my port side. I brake hard. The turn requires my right foot on the rudder and my left hand on the secondary thruster controls, and both respond late. The foot lags by a half beat, the hand by enough that I overcorrect and dump velocity I cannot afford to lose. The machine ships bracket me. I twist toward a gap in the wreckage and realize a fraction of a second too late that it is narrower than my wingspan. The impact shears the starboard wing at the root. My interceptor spirals. A kinetic round comes through the canopy, and the loop catches me one last time. Frost on the canopy. Same branches, same gap, same clear patch. Loop 17, the last one. My left hand is a claw. The fingers contract to a loose fist and refuse to straighten fully without the right hand prying them open. My right hand works, tremor and all, but the coordination between intent and motion has degraded to the point where every action demands a separate conscious instruction. Press this switch. Now this one. Grip. Release. Each step isolated, each step burning concentration that used to flow as a single unbroken current from brain to fingertip. The rudder delay in my right foot has worsened to nearly a full second. My spatial processing fails outright if I move my head too quickly. The visual field smears, and I have to hold still and wait for it to settle before I can check instruments or judge distance. Standard combat flying is beyond me. Even basic maneuvering requires the kind of grinding, focused effort that exhausts my concentration within minutes. The artifact sits in its bracket beside my seat, shedding its map. I do not look at it. There is nothing in its projections that will help me, and everything it records goes straight to the fleet if it catches me dying again. I have one plan left, and it requires giving up the only thing that has kept me alive for 17 days. I fly toward the Harlan County. The approach takes longer than it should. Twice I stop and correct my heading because my spatial processing dropped a reference point, and I drifted off course without registering the deviation. The transport's hull fills my canopy as I close, enormous at this range, a converted cargo vessel with passenger modules welded to its frame in blocky, utilitarian sections. The docking port is a standard military-spec collar on the port side. I dock on the second attempt. My fingers handle the 3-part latch sequence with a level of concentration that leaves me winded, as if I had been holding something heavy over my head instead of pressing 3 switches. I take the artifact from beside my seat and tuck it inside my flight suit. The airlock opens, and I board the Harlan County for the first time in 17 loops. The ship is dense with people. Narrow corridors, passenger berths stacked 3 high, faces everywhere in the dim utility lighting. Men, women, children. Some look up as I pass in my flight suit, and the hope that crosses their expressions when they see the military insignia is the worst thing I have encountered in 17 days. I find the bridge, a converted cargo management deck with instruments jury-rigged onto shipping consoles and 4 crew members monitoring stations they were probably trained on in a 2-hour briefing during the evacuation. Brennan stands at the center console. A man in his late 50s, merchant marine insignia on a jacket that does not match the rest of his clothes. Heavy build, thick forearms, a face shaped by decades of long shifts in hard conditions. He watches me come through the hatch, and I can see him cataloguing the details. The tremor, the stiff left hand, the way I catch myself on the doorframe when my balance stutters. Lieutenant Wyatt? Captain Brennan. 15 loops of hearing his voice, and this is the first time I have seen his face. I have something for you, and I don't have time to be gentle about it. I pull the artifact from my flight suit. The faceted solid sits in my tremoring right hand, dark for a moment, then shedding pale threads as if responding to the new environment. The light threads extend toward the bridge equipment, testing, reaching, finding nothing familiar. Brennan looks at the threads, then at my hand. This is the artifact, I say. It didn't reset the day because I touched it. It reset because I kept it aboard my interceptor, used its maps while connected to active combat systems, and died with a live trace open. It builds a holder profile through use. At death, it completes the trace and transmits the data back through the fleet. Rivera, at the comm station, has gone still. It is their weapon, I say. They deployed it for me to find. Brennan studies the object in my hand. He does not reach for it. If it's their weapon, why bring it aboard my ship? Because the fleet is loaded with 16 completed loops of my flying. Every algorithm in that formation is optimized to counter my approaches, my timing, my habits. Everything they understand about fighting me, they learned from me. When I fly toward them, every ship out there will commit to the target they have spent 16 completed cycles perfecting themselves against. They will pursue me because I am the only pattern in their library. And the Harlan County isn't in their data. Your ship has never engaged them. You've never flown against them. The route I'm about to transmit uses approach vectors and timing that exist nowhere in the fleet's training set. While every machine ship in the formation is chasing me, you run the corridor on a path they have no counter for. And the artifact? Off my ship, away from my combat systems, sealed cold. Do not connect it to anything. Do not query it. Do not let anyone use its projections. If you are boarded or breached, jettison it. If someone dies holding it while it's active, assume the trace completes. Brennan looks to Rivera. Shielded instrument case, now. Rivera opens a storage locker built into the aft bulkhead and pulls out a hard-sided case lined for radiation samples. Brennan sets it on the console and opens it himself. I lower the artifact inside. The pale threads lash once against the case lining, thin and frantic, then contract into pinpoints along the object's surface. Brennan closes the lid and seals both latches. The case hums as its field engages. The bracket beside my ejection seat is empty now. The artifact is off my ship, off their line. What happens to you, Lieutenant? Brennan asks. I fly toward the fleet and draw their full response. The formation is built around killing me. I give them the chance. Without the artifact. Without the artifact. No reset if something goes wrong. No reset. Brennan rests one hand on the sealed case. His grip is sure. No tremor. No hesitation. Your route, he says. Transmit it. And the number is 3008, Lieutenant. Don't make me revise it. I send the corridor path from my suit's comms unit. 16 layers of observation compressed into one trajectory, stripped of every vector I have personally flown, contoured around the Harlan County's operational limits. A route built for Harvey Brennan, designed from the ground up around the gaps in a fleet that has only ever studied Danny Wyatt. Then I walk back through the corridors lined with passengers who watch me pass with that same terrible hope, board my interceptor through the docking collar and seal the cockpit. The artifact is gone. Its bracket beside my seat is empty. The cockpit feels stripped, final, the way a room feels when you have packed everything worth carrying and know you will not be coming back through the door. If I die in this interceptor, the death will hold. The frost will not return. The 18th morning will never come. I detach from the Harlan County, bring my engines to power, and fly toward the alien fleet for the last time. The approach is fast and low through the wreckage field, using the defense ring's wreckage as cover, the way I have done on every loop. But my flying is different now. Ragged. The turns come late because my foot is late. The corrections overshoot because my fine control is gone. I clip rubble I should clear by meters. I burn fuel on unnecessary thrust adjustments because my spatial processing drops a distance calculation, and I compensate with brute force instead of precision. The machine fleet detects me and responds. 200 ships begin to reorient, and I can see the formation shift, the fleet deploying its counter-Wyatt doctrine, the culmination of 16 completed loops of study. Pursuit ships vector toward my predicted evasion corridors. Screening elements slide into position over the angles I have historically used for attack runs. The formation is solving the problem of Danny Wyatt with 16 completed cycles of accumulated expertise, the most complete tactical portrait it has ever built of a single pilot. The portrait does not match the pilot who arrives. My flying is degraded in ways their algorithms cannot model, because the Danny Wyatt in their database was faster, sharper, and had 2 functional hands. The gaps between what the fleet expects and what I actually do buy me seconds, ugly, ragged seconds where a pursuit ship overshoots because I turn slower than the prediction, or a screening element covers an angle I would have used 6 loops ago but cannot manage with my current coordination. I push deeper into the formation. Machine ships close from every quarter, executing the coordinated kill pattern they have refined across 16 completed cycles. I am the center of their attention. 200 automated warships, the product of an optimization process that spans the wreckage of civilizations, focused entirely on one damaged interceptor flown by a man who can barely hold his heading. Behind me, on the edge of my rear display, the Harlan County's engine signature flares as Brennan fires his drives and pushes for the transit corridor. The fleet holds on me. The fleet is committed. Every ship in the formation is running the doctrine it was built to run, chasing the signal it was designed to answer. The Harlan County hits the corridor approach on Brennan's route, threading the gap in the formation's coverage at the time and angle that 16 loops of observation identified as the widest opening. The transport is slow and heavy, and 3,008 passengers bright on every sensor in the wreckage field, and every machine ship that should be vectoring to intercept is instead converging on my interceptor, because my interceptor is the pattern their entire tactical architecture was constructed to destroy. I see the transport clear the formation's first layer on my rear display, then the second. The Harlan County is running the corridor, and the fleet is chasing a ghost it spent 16 completed loops learning to kill. A kinetic round hits my engine housing. Thrust dies. My interceptor begins a slow, ugly tumble. 2 more rounds hit the fuselage, and the cockpit frame buckles inward on the port side, pinning my left arm against the ejection seat. I reach across my body with my right hand, find the ejection handle, and pull. The canopy blows. The seat fires. I clear the disintegrating interceptor, and the escape pod's emergency shell closes around me. I am spinning through the rubble field in a propulsion-dead capsule the size of a coffin, its emergency power keeping my transponder and life support alive as it throws a rescue signal into a stretch of orbit, where there is no one left to hear it. For a moment, the fleet keeps firing into the rubble cloud that used to be my interceptor. Then its formation shudders, the automated kill pattern reaching its completed state and finding no active combat signature left to pursue. By the time the machine ships disengage and reorient toward the corridor, the transport is through. Through the pod's viewport, tumbling, I catch a fractured glimpse of the Harlan County's engine glow, a bright point moving past the wreckage of the defense ring, heading for the outer system. I drift. The pod rotates. Earth fills the viewport, then the shrapnel belt, then open space, then Earth again. My rescue beacon sends its signal into the vacuum, buried among 10,000 other emergency transponders still broadcasting from wrecked stations and dead ships. I hang in the harness and watch the view cycle, and wait. The Harlan County reached the outer colonies 11 days later. 3,008 passengers disembarked at Fermi Station in the belt, most processed into temporary housing within 48 hours. Brennan kept the artifact sealed in the shielded case until docking, then surrendered it to military intelligence during the review that followed. He was commended for the decision to run the corridor. He told the board that the decision belonged to a lieutenant who was probably still drifting in the rubble field, if anyone cared to go and look. They found my pod on the 12th day. An outer system patrol cruiser, skirting the outer edge of the rubble ring for recoverable military assets, picked up my beacon buried in the signal noise. I was alive, dehydrated, hypothermic, disoriented from 12 days of slow rotation in a capsule barely large enough to stretch my legs. The cruiser's medical team stabilized my temperature, started fluids, and ran a neurological workup that took most of the afternoon. The results confirmed what I already knew. The temporal radiation damage was permanent. My left hand would never recover fine motor control. My right hand's tremor would stabilize over months, but remain present at baseline. Reaction time, roughly double normal, would improve marginally with rehabilitation and never return to flight certification standard. I was grounded. The word was permanent, and the flight surgeon said it carefully, as if he expected me to argue. I did not argue. I had known since Loop 12. Debriefings ran 3 weeks at a secure facility on the colony station. Military intelligence wanted every detail I could give them about the machine fleet's internal architecture. The data pathways, the command ship's processing structure, the way tactical updates distributed through the formation. My account became the single most valuable intelligence product of the war, and the most fragile, because the temporal radiation was eating my memory alongside everything else. Details from the early loops had already blurred. Fleet configurations I had mapped with confidence on Loop 8 were softening into general impressions. Procedural sequences I had observed inside the machine ship were losing resolution. The order of chambers grew uncertain, the structure of the data core harder to reconstruct with each passing day. I spent hours in recorded sessions, pulling what I could from my head before it faded. Some of my statements contradicted earlier ones. The intelligence analysts learned to ask the same question on different days and average the answers. They understood the material was spoiling and there was no second source. I live in temporary quarters at Fermi Station, a small room with a view of the docking bay. I received a commendation, distinguished service something, and did not attend the ceremony. I walk the station corridors with a hitch in my step where my right foot lags every few paces, a stutter that months of physical therapy have reduced from a stumble to an inconvenience. My left hand stays in my pocket most of the time. I have learned to manage everything that matters with my right. Brennan sent me a message 3 weeks after I arrived. One line, no preamble, confirming the artifact was secured in a research facility and the passenger count had held. I did not reply for a long time. When I wrote back, I asked only whether the number was still 3008. Brennan confirmed that it was. I closed the message and sat in my quarters, watching shuttles dock through the window, trying to feel something that matched the scale of what had happened. The feeling never arrived in the shape I expected. I was just glad about a number. The war goes on. The machine fleet holds Earth orbit. It will learn again. It has always learned. It has built itself on the wreckage of civilizations older than ours, optimized against defenders more capable than me. But learning costs time. And time is what 3008 people needed to reach a place where they could keep breathing. I bought it the only way I could. I spent myself, and then I stopped spending, and then I gave the thing away. I can hold a coffee cup if I use both hands. Some mornings I wake, and for a fraction of a second I cannot place which morning it is. The frost, or the absence of frost. The cockpit or the room, the loop or the after. Then the ache in my knuckles and the stiffness in my wrist and the unfamiliar ceiling tell me where I am. I am in the last morning. The one that does not reset. The one where what I did either mattered or it did not, and I have to keep living in the answer.